Happy holidays and welcome back to another episode of Diamond Podcast. I'm your host, local realtor, entrepreneur, and community advocate, Alfredo Diamond. Thank you for tuning in again. I've got a special guest today during this holiday season here. We've been talking about this for a while now, and such a great guy, very talented, innovative, smart, the whole nine. Just a great person, and always shows me respect when we sit side by side during our monthly meetings with the chamber and et cetera. I want to welcome a very special guest, Belden Cable and Wire Vice President, Research and Development, Marty Van Der Burgt. Welcome, Marty.
All
Thanks
right,
for joining
thank you.
us.
I'm glad to be here finally. We've been trying to do this for a while, and glad to be here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You got an I like your background. I've checked you out. I've looked at your LinkedIn page time after time, and I'm intrigued because it reminds me a lot of myself. I would imagine, looking at your career path and with your tenure with Belden, you really represent hard work and where you can end up with. You keep applying yourself, and I love that. Am I right about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just celebrated 34 years with Belden, right?
Man,
so
congratulations.
Thank you.
It's a
Been there for a long time, and it's been great, right? I think it's a two-way street, though, right? So as an individual, you need to bring yourself every day, bring your authentic self, and bring those skills that make you desirable as an employee, and then likewise as an employer, you need to provide the atmosphere, you need to provide the training, you need to provide those opportunities, right, for the employees, for them to stay. Otherwise, they're going to go elsewhere. And Belden's been really great with me over that, and many people over many years. Our CEO is a 20-plus year veteran with Belden as well, right?
Wow.
So we promote from within, we train our folks, we like to do that. So it's been a great ride for me and for many people at Belden, yeah.
That's amazing. And so talk about, like, you think about 34 years here. Are you from Wayne County? I mean, walk me through that. Like, how did you end up here?
Yeah, no, I'm actually not, and I appreciate we're having the sno today. I'm from Wisconsin originally,
so
I'm loving the snow today, the day
Man.
we're filming this. But so I'm originally from the Green Bay, Wisconsin area, big Packers fan.
Okay,
so
go Packers.
if you were to stop in my office, you'd see a huge shrine to the Green Bay Packers. Vince Lombardi, Bart Favre, the whole nine yards.
Yeah.
So, we big Green Bay fan. I went to University of Milwaukee in Wisconsin, and I had an opportunity there to work with a company called Cooper Industries.
Like tires?
Well, they were a conglomerate that owned all sorts of different companies.
Okay.
One of those companies they actually owned was Belden at the time.
Oh, yeah, I
and that's
remember that,
a
yeah.
really long story we probably don't have time for today.
Yeah,
But long story short, as that career went on and I started with them in university, I had the opportunity to transfer down here to Richmond and work with Belden, which I was really excited about, right? So my background is an RF and microwave, amateur radio operator. My dad was big into electronics and got me started in that as a kid. And so when I told my dad I was going to go work at Belden, he's like, "Oh, wait, antenna cable free for my son. That's awesome," right? Telling all his buddies. So took the opportunity to come down to Belden. I was here about a year or so, I believe it was, and then Cooper sold Belden off as an IPO to raise some cash. And so I had to make the decision: do you stay with Belden? Do you stay with Cooper? I, along with several other people, decided to stay with Belden, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Thinking back to that time, you're an innovative guy, I can tell. Well, you saw something. So what was the determining factor for you to make that decision, especially at a young age?
Yeah, so what I would say it was the people, actually, right? So the folks that I was working with in the engineering center, which is here in Richmond, in the laboratories and such, when I came to work every day, they all had a smile on their face, right? And they were genuinely interested in you. I built some friendships. So all the engineers at that time, Belden had moved here from Chicago. So we started in Chicago in 1902. The last folks up there were the engineers. They kind of forgot about us. They were up in Geneva, just outside of Chicago. They moved them down here in '89.
Okay.
So when I came in the early '90s, everybody here was a transplant. They weren't from Richmond, for the most part, in the engineering center. So we made friends, right? We did stuff together. We had a euchre club, played volleyball, did all these things, and so became great friends with the people I worked with. And they had a smile on their face. And when I was working in Milwaukee and some other areas earlier in my career, I didn't necessarily see a smile on everybody's face every day. And for me, that was kind of the determining factor. It's like, this is a fun place to work. It's great people. I'm really enjoying myself. I like the work that I'm doing. I'm going to stay here and give this a try.
As far as your first position, what was your first entry level position when you got to Richmond?
So my entry level position here was I was the junior coax engineer.
Okay.
And so I worked on RF and microwave cables, and so I was working on like transmission lines for television and for radio and broadcast. Was part of that on the broadcast side, and then on the microwave side, we wanted to do something in very high frequency for microwave transmissions, which was becoming very popular and more expansive in the 90s. And so I worked with a group of guys, and we designed and developed a product we called conformable coax, which basically was a hand-formable product that you could use that would carry signals up to 20 gigahertz, right, for use in satellites and microwave dishes and all that sort of stuff. And so that was my first big project that I brought to fruition and to the market, and my boss really loved that. we had a patent on that. We made a lot of money on that over the years. It's in satellites orbiting the planet now. So it was a really cool project, and that was the first thing I did. And so as I worked through the technical issues of that, and my boss found out that I could manage a project, I could manage the technology, I could work with people in the factory. That particular factory was in Vermont. And so one of our many Belden factories around the country at that time. And so that kind of was the first stepping stone, right, to more responsibility, bigger projects, larger projects, managing a team, so on and so forth.
So when you look at that position and the position you're now, how long have you been in this position here, by the way?
So I've been in this position now since 2019, more or less.
Okay,
Yeah.
so about 5 years.
Yes.
5 years. So what was it like getting prepared to this opportunity you're in now? Like, how did you find out about it? Did someone recommend this position for you? I mean, walk me through from when you applied, or if you had to apply, and then when you got that call for this is a big job.
So it was really exciting, right? So I was the director of engineering before that. So I was director for cable engineering, which meant I had responsibilities in North America for our wire and cable business on the product design and innovation piece. And so in 2019, we were doing a bit of a reorganization, kind of positioning ourselves to get to where we are today and where we're going on this journey. And so I guess maybe to back up a little bit with the story is that Belden, and most people here that are watching probably know us as a wire and cable company here in Richmond, right? But we do way more than that, right? We have the wire and cable, we have the connectors that go on the cable, we have the racks that's put in, we have the switches that you hook them up to, we have the software that controls everything. So we have the whole infrastructure package now, which people don't maybe realize that. They still think of us as the wire and cable company, which, again, part of the journey that we're on as what we do. But the opportunity then was to start putting the parts of the business together. Okay. And so I had the cable piece, and they said, well, if you got a cable, you got to put a connector on each end. Why aren't the engineers for the cable and the connector, working closely together, right? Let's put them under one person to make that happen. And so that was kind of the evolution of this role, moving to a vice presidential role and taking a bigger leadership role. So we did two things at that time. Number one is we took all of our wire and cable globally and made me responsible for the engineering portion of that and the innovation portion, the intellectual property design to pull globally together what we were doing, right? It's kind of like McDonald's. You get a Big Mac, it should be the same everywhere, right?
Consistent.
So we're making Big Macs, we want to make them the same everywhere, right? So that was step one. And then step two, which came I think a year or so later, was to add in the connectivity piece. So now I have what we would call data acquisition and transmission, which is a fancy word for saying the wire plus the cable, right? So that, or the cable plus the connector. Yeah. So that's how that came about.
That's really cool because you got to create your own position somewhat.
To a certain degree, yeah. So if you go back and look at my career development plan and the things I've been writing in my annual reviews, where do you want to be in 3 years, those sort of things, that was kind of always where I had hoped to be, right? Because that's my sweet spot, knowing the cable, and of course you got to put the connector on the end. So let's get that together and get that infrastructure portion done. And so that's something I've always wanted to do. And so in 2019 I got called into one of the big boss's office, and he was sitting there smiling and had, why don't you have a seat? And you're thinking, oh my goodness, what did I do?
Yeah.
What did I do? And he presented me with the opportunity, and went home, spoke with my wife about it, because I knew it would mean, more travel and other things. My life was going to change a little bit in terms of what I could do here in Richmond, what I could do with my family. So had that discussion with my wife, and we decided, that's what we want to do. So.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple things I want to touch on here in a moment, such as the rebranding and some of the connector piece. But I want to take a step back. You've had an amazing career, 34 years at Belden, the same employer. That's like in my world where I'm from, that's kind of like a fairy tale career to be with the same employer. So when you look at that, it's not always sweet though. What can you think of a difficult time where you've dealt with some adversity that you had to overcome in your career, and how'd you get through that?
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting question, right? Because life is not always a bed of roses. There's always things that that you could take one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I got some good advice from my first manager at Belden back in the day, Tom Sikirka, who kind of mentored me, took me under his wing for the first several years, and and he kind of let me know there's certain things you have control on in life and certain things you don't, and if you keep your head down and you do your job and you do what's right for the customer, for our product, for the business, and for yourself, and balance that as necessary. If you do what's right, you should always come out at least with your head held high and know that you did the right thing, and you should feel good about that. And so I tried to keep that in mind as I would go through diversity. Yeah. Did I always agree with my senior manager? No. Did I agree with the decision that was made or where we went? No. But you know what? 80% plus of the time, I did.
Yeah.
And some of those things, you kind of work through them. And, businesses are, they're a live organism. People maybe don't realize that. But, you start going down the wrong path as a business, and you've got smart people and good people, you realize that. And you correct that path, and you make changes, and you move forward. You learn and you grow and you move forward. And so if you keep that attitude and you look at continuous improvement and where you want to go and keep your customer in mind, you can always navigate those things. And so I think Belden's done a great job of that over the years. I think our management team has done a great job of that over the years, and hopefully we'll continue to do that for a few more.
Yeah, and speaking of that, so all the departments you oversee and the staff, and you think about where we are geographically here in Wayne County, what are some challenges you faced economically, maybe locally, as far as maybe unemployment? Because there's some boards that we sit in on together and some events, and I've heard you speak about some great points, especially when it comes to retaining, attracting talent. Like, Belden is pretty innovative. It's stuck in my mind that some of the programs you guys have for potential employees and interns. Can you share some of that with us?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting, right? So you need to look at the opportunity to bring people to Richmond and to Wayne County, and what would make people want to come here, what would make people want to stay here, right? And I think collectively, we've got a lot of issues right there that we need to work through. And I think, if you look at the Chamber of Commerce, the EDC, various organizations are doing a great job of collaborating now, right? And realizing, hey, we're kind of at a tipping point here. Either we need to reinvest in some of these things and quality of place and housing and other things that we're doing to retain and attract folks here, or, let's roll up the sidewalks and call it a day, right? Yeah. So I think we're making some really good decisions now. We've got some great plans for the future of Wayne County, and I'm really excited about that in terms of getting those folks here. But yeah, so but specifically to my team, right? So we run an internship program, right, where I bring in 4 college interns every summer that spend 12, 16 weeks with us, right? So from Purdue or Rose-Hulman or Case Western, various Midwestern universities. We put them up here and let them get a taste of us, get a taste of Wayne County, and see what it's like, and hopefully that turns into a long interview process where they say yes and come and join us as a full-time employee. And then likewise, as we look at our early career program, we've got a great program for early career individuals where we work with them in mentorship and training and exposures, and a 3-year rotation where they get to try out different job experiences, right? See kind of what fits them best, right? Because you don't always know that when you graduate where your slot might be. So I think Belden has a lot of programs to help those young folks, but as a community, we need to help those folks as well, right? Yeah. Because as I look at my new college hires that are coming in, it's very difficult right now in Richmond and Wayne County, right? In terms of where can they find an apartment? What amenities are here, so on and so forth. So, and when you look at it, we got a lot of great stuff going for us here, right? So it's super exciting, but effectively communicating that and getting folks involved is a bit of a challenge right now. So looking forward to what's going to happen here in Wayne County over the next 3 to 5 years, right? Really exciting times, and hopefully that helps us all with retention as well as attraction for employees.
Absolutely. And you talk about, earlier you talked about, some rebranding and adding the connectors. You touched on a little bit of that. Why the rebranding now? Can you talk about why that come about?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So if you've seen my Facebook page or LinkedIn page, you've seen I've shared the videos from Belden, right? So we've rebranded, still Belden, and Belden is our premier brand. But again, here in Richmond and Wayne County, folks think of us as the wire and cable guy. As I mentioned earlier, that's the biggest portion of what we do.
Yeah.
But we're 8,500 people around the world. We do software, we do switches, we do all sorts of stuff. And so really what we do, if you think about what Belden does, is we connect people, we connect information, and we connect ideas, right? And we put that whole infrastructure together to make that happen for a safer, more efficient, and productive environment for everybody. And so really we want people to know that and think of us as a friend that they can come to, that we can help solve their problems and make their business better, right? Or make their product better, do those sort of things. So we don't want people to be thinking of us as just a wire and cable company. We need to be thought of as the solution company, right? Hey, let's go talk to Belden. And so part of this rebranding that we're doing is to kind of highlight that and to put that step forward, or that foot forward, for folks to help think of us in a different way. So, we used to have Belden, or sending all the right signals because we're thinking about the cable and company. Now we talk about connecting to what's possible, and we want to make that happen.
Hey, and talking about hardware, no pun intended, but you got some new hardware as in a trophy or an award here recently, and we'll talk about several others. But did you guys win an Emmy?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah.
Right, we won an Emmy award. Yeah. So I get asked about this every once in a while. I wish I would have brought it with me today.
That'd be so cool.
Could have sat it here on the table.
Yeah.
But so one of the things, this goes back to my days when I was the engineer in the broadcast area, is that when high definition video came out, right? So everybody was talking about 1080i, 1080p, all this high definition in live broadcast. There really wasn't a way to do that because the copper infrastructure that was used for traditional broadcast and cameras, you think it goes back to the old black and white days with Walter Cronkite talking to our parents and our grandparents, right? And so we needed to come up with a solution that we could do this high precision video transmissions. And so I, along with several others, worked on many designs to try to do that, and came up with a way to do that with fiber optic cable that's a hybrid, with fiber for the video signals and then copper for the audio and the power.
So is that a thing now? They're doing a hybrid?
It's a hybrid cable, yeah.
My background with the cable, I always think about fiber, then the coax. So, but you're saying there's a hybrid solution.
Yeah,
there.
you put them all together. Put it all together under one jacket, and you get one cable that goes to the camera, and it turns on the red light to let you know to look at that camera. It gives you the audio, it provides the power, and it also carries the video signal.
How does that all work? Because now you're talking.
Well, now I can't be giving away any trade secrets here, Al. That's.
I'm just fascinated. I'm thinking about new wires. You gotta have new connectors.
Exactly.
And then equipment like. So things are always changing.
Exactly.
You got this camera that has to take this fitting, or maybe there's adapters. I don't know, but that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. And so the issue was that there were several competing ideas out there on how to do that, right? And so the problem is, if you're ESPN and you pull up to the Colts stadium this week and want to hook up your cameras and broadcast the game, then you're out in Seattle next week. If it's not the same, you can't hook up your broadcast truck and make things happen, right?
That's true, yeah.
So I sat on a standards committee here in North America, and we came up with, this is the standard that we're going to use, and this is how the cable's going to be designed, this is how the connector's going to be designed. And so basically, Belden and some of our partners were the ones to make this happen. It became an industry standard through the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers. And then, just a few years ago, we were recognized for bringing that technology and standardizing it and making live broadcast available all over the world to come into your living room, right? And so, in recognition of that and all the work that we have done, they awarded Belden an Emmy Award.
Wow.
So it was really cool. The disappointing part, I'll tell the second half of the story, is that we got it actually during COVID, right? So when I found out that we were getting the Emmy Award, which was several months before, right? I couldn't tell anybody. Told my wife, and she's all excited. We're going to the red carpet. I'm going to buy a new dress. We're going to have a great time.
No, it's going to be on TV. It's on the internet.
Yeah, no, it's on. It's during COVID. There's no gathering. They're sending it to you in the mail.
Man.
All this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But it was super exciting nonetheless, and a great recognition of the work, not only that I done, but the team here at Belden. We actually designed and built the first cables of that here in Richmond, in our factory in Richmond. So shout out to all the operators here in Richmond and the engineers that helped me do that. It's certainly not one guy that makes these things happen. One guy might have an idea, but it takes a small army to make things happen, right?
Just an amazing organization right here in our own backyard.
Yeah, it was super.
But there's some other awards. So there's tell me about those. There's another couple of awards you won for innovation.
Yeah, so we've won some throughout the years. We win some of these awards. So our most recent area was Cable Installation and Maintenance Magazine. They recognized Belden in a couple of our products. I think 5 or 6 in total as gold honorees this past year. So we have a couple of those. In one of them also related to broadcast. It's one of our markets for an indoor-outdoor stadium cable, if you will, and then also for some of our new push-pull connectors. So yeah, it was pretty exciting. And again, it's one of those technologies, right? You get out, you talk to your customers, you see what they're doing. As we look at some of those products, the problem, you kind of brought this up, Al, it's like, how do you hook this stuff together? Or how do you get these different things to go together? And now when you build a stadium, for example, you might run a cable all the way through that stadium, right? So it might be underneath the field where it's in mud and water and out in the elements, might be coiled up on the side of the field where it's getting sunlight. It's running up through the stands and into the suites and up to the broadcast area. So you got to meet all these fire codes, right? And smoke codes so that if there's a fire, safety is preeminent. So having one cable that could do all of those things, pretty unique, right? In the past, it would be, well, here's a cable for underground, and here's a cable for out in the sun, and here's a cable for the fire rating, and let's hook these 4 things together to get your cable run. Now we can do that with one cable, so that's why we were recognized.
What's the product life for something like me? Things are always changing. I mean, something cool like that. How long will you think it will last before there's the next thing comes along?
Well, that's a great question. So we design all of our products to last a minimum of 10 years in whatever we say they're going to do, right? So if I say this is going to work underground for 10 years, you can bet your bottom dollar that's what it's going to do. Some of our products we have a 25-year warranty on. So it really depends on the product and where it's being used and how it's being used. But technology, to your point, changes very quickly, right? So when you think about infrastructure, you always want to think about what's coming down the road, and you want to be designing and innovating to that next 1 or 2 or 3 steps up, right? So for example, back in the early 1990s, we designed a product with a bonded pair technology, which we called our media twist cable. This was available like in 93, 94. It met the Cat 6A standards that didn't come out until like 5 years ago. Right, we were building it 20 years ago, so you got to stay ahead, because if you build a new building, you put in a whole new infrastructure for your computers and your data center and everything. You don't want to rip that out in 5 years and replace it all, right? That's an expensive proposition. You want it to last for 20, 25, 30 years.
I might be reaching here, but did I see something? Did you share something on your LinkedIn page possibly where Belden is? You talked about new products and things like that and being a solution. Are you in cyberspace now?
Yes,
cybersecurity
so
space.
We are in the cybersecurity space,
so.
right? Yep.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, we have not only the wire and cable, but the switches, the software, the whole infrastructure now, and that demands that you have cybersecurity, right? So we've got mass transit rail systems running on Belden systems, power transmission and distribution systems running on our systems, et cetera, et cetera. So you got to make sure your customers are safe.
Yeah. So I was just intrigued by that. So Marty, what type of challenges do you have from being a local employer here in Wayne County? What are you seeing out there?
In terms of talent, or in terms of
being here local, like sourcing product?
Yep.
What can you elaborate on?
Yeah, so I would say Wayne County is a great place to be as an employer, because we have the major highways here and rail, right?
Yeah.
So anything I want, I can get here. That's not a problem. I think the bigger issue is talent, right? Finding folks to come and work with us and spending that time, right? So a lot of what we do, you've heard some of my story here, but it's not something you learn in a day or a week or a month. It's something that takes you time to learn and to become an expert and to make that product well. So we're looking for folks to come and work with us and spend a career with us and do these things. So and I think in today's world, that's a little difficult for folks because people are always looking for the next best thing, right? Or how do I get a step up or where do I go? And the thought of, hey, staying somewhere and being rewarded by that company and me, benefiting them, as I said, it's a two-way street, right? And so I think if you can find a corporation that can help you with that, which I think Belden does quite well, then you have that opportunity to grow and be successful for a long period of time.
Yeah. So it's great. You've got a fascinating story, an amazing path. Thank you so much for sharing, the ins and outs of your position and as an employer. If you thinking about your path, if you could give a shout out today to while you're here to one person or a group that have been supportive of you in your role, who would it be and why?
Wow, that's a great question. So professionally, I would point out, as I mentioned earlier, Tom Sakirka, who was he was the guy that actually hired me to come down to Richmond from my other Cooper role, and gave me a lot of good advice over the years and mentored me those first couple of years. And I got if I was truthful, I'd say the first year or two we probably didn't have the best relationship because I thought he was giving me the business a little bit, but in retrospect, he was really guiding me to be where I am today. So I would say that, and then I think the second group of people I would point to as more of a group of people, and that would be the guys that I go to church with, right? So I remember the Catholic community here in Richmond, and as an early on, I was living in an apartment eating cold Cheerios, right, for breakfast, and I was at church one Sunday and I saw on the bulletin, men's breakfast. I'm thinking, man, eggs, toast, hot stuff, coffee. I'm eating cold Cheerios. I'm going to go check this out. And so I went to that men's breakfast and met a lot of great guys here in Richmond and Wayne County, and they encouraged me and mentored me, and we did a lot of things together. And so I would give a shout out to that as well.
Okay, great. Well, I wish you happy holidays. I can't thank you enough for being here. You've got an amazing story. You're just a great guy. I'm glad to call you a friend. I see you're a friend.
Absolutely.
And,
likewise.
It's been a pleasure having you here. And that wraps up another episode of our Diamond Podcast. Happy holidays, everyone, and we'll see you on the next episode.